we avoid unnecessary litigation and unnecessary politics and saying things that we probably don't understand. Where someone wakes up from his house and starts saying the prices of Safaricom should be 75. Another one talks about it was 45. Yeah? Without elaborating to you what made it to be 45. You know, capital markets, the way they operate, I don't know whether these people really understand how capital markets operate. Those of us who have studied capital markets, how they operate, we know that always the prices are dictated by signal. Yeah, and you get a politician who does not even take his time to engage his brain properly in how capital markets work. Then it was 45 shillings in 20. So why is it 28 today? He's not explaining to you that. Because his mind is stuck like a gramophone in some kind of political discourse that doesn't really help much. But I mean, working with the timelines that we had earlier given on KPC privatization. But we are also alive to the fact that there are processes that need to be followed, and those processes have to be completed and completed satisfactorily. So we are not going to rush anything, but the timeline of March is still very much the timeline that we are working. Actually, we want this privatization process to move as fast as possible so that we get this process to help us set up a fund, the National Infrastructure Fund, because the National Infrastructure Fund will be funded or capitalized with the initial seed capital from the privatization proceeds and divestiture. One of the candidates for privatization that we have identified is KPC. And we have explained the reasons why it was a candidate for privatization. One is it was already a limited liability company. It is a mature asset as far as our assessment is concerned. It's a profit-making parastatal, and one that clearly has all the advantages of reaching the point where it can be taken even to Nairobi Securities Exchange, and together with the Safaricom divestiture. So this will be the first two state-owned enterprises, or rather state assets that will go through the divestiture and privatization to help us realize the seed money for capitalizing the National Infrastructure Fund. The others will come later and we'll explain. On KQ, I want to still reserve my comment because a lot of happenings are taking place there. And right now we are looking at the governance of KQ in general. So I don't want to preempt that discussion. On your question about the interest rates for 2026, I think the interest rates for 2026 will at the very least remain rather stable as it is today. But we expect even lower interest rates in 2026. One, informed by global happenings, because we are not isolated as a country. If you look at what is happening even in the US economy, they are lowering the interest rates. But even locally, things are getting better. Our inflation is still managed within the midpoint average of 5%, below the midpoint. We have other fundamentals working. The forex reserves are fairly stable. The shilling is fairly stable, unless the weather patterns change drastically. So a lot of fundamentals, the macros, are relatively going to remain stable, and therefore the interest rates can only get better. We are hopeful that the 2026 will see more credit going to the private sector and expanding the economic activities and even creating more jobs. Sophia KTN, you actually questioned or asked us about the state of National Infrastructure Fund. First of all, it should be understood that this is a fund that is going to be anchored on the Government-Owned Enterprises Act, GOE. I have had many people questioning the legal framework within which we are going to operate. They are forgetting that there is a bill, there is a law that we just passed, and that law is very robust. It's actually not just targeting this fund, the National Infrastructure Fund, but it is speaking to all commercially viable state-owned enterprises. The commercially viable state-owned enterprises are going to have a complete shift, paradigm shift in terms of governance, and even in terms of constituting the board members. The way board membership of parastatals are being constituted today has drastically changed with the Government-Owned Enterprises Act, which is targeting only commercially viable government-owned enterprises. There are about 60 which you have targeted. And I'm already communicating to them, the governance structures of those institutions to change and change their articles of association to be in line with GOE Act. And then we are going to reconstitute the boards because the law now demands a more transparent, a more professional way of constituting those boards. Unlike previously, when chairs were just appointed and nominated and appointed, board membership were just appointed by cabinet secretaries, and that's it. Now this is going to be different. There are going to be interviews, there are going to be shortlisting, there's going to be a more transparent way of constituting the governance structure of this institution. So National Infrastructure Fund will also be a government-owned enterprise, commercially viable, professionally run, and so it is a limited liability company that we are going to form, and the process is on of constituting the company. So that is what I would say about Nigeria, unless you will have a follow-up question later. Now, in terms of how did we arrive at the students, first we allowed the student leaders, because the student leadership in our public universities are known, and they have been elected through a democratic process. So we allowed the student leadership from those institutions to congregate and bring themselves together to meet us. And among them are also students from schools of economics. But if we want to engage more also with School of Economics, or those who are from the business school, those who are from faculties of commerce and all the rest. So we will have that maybe standalone engagement. But among the student leadership, there are a number of them who have come from school, of those who are taking economics. In fact, they're the ones who are most interested in this. Together with the lawyers, by the way, lawyers are also very, very interested in this process. And of course, their report that they will respond to, I will allow them once I'm done on what are the highlights, and maybe is it addressing capitation, health, etc. That one I would want them to be the ones responding, because I've not read the report also. On so you will take note of that, Chairman. David, on the road bond, I may not, because it's being coordinated from the Ministry of Roads and my PDMO office, Public Debt Management Office, giving them guidance. But what I know is that the bridge financing is almost complete. It's like all the money has been raised to them before. So the money that the bond is going to raise will just pay back the money that the various financial institutions gave. And this month we are clearing all the historical pending bills up to December 2024 in the road sector. There should be no contractor in this country asking for payment from government for any road works that were done before December 2024 by the end of this month. That's the understanding we have with the Ministry of Roads. It's a milestone for this government, because some of these bills are dating back to 2005. But we are saying by end of this year, we should not hear of any road contractor who did work with the national government who has not been paid up to 2024 December. So the bills that should be talked about is from January 2025 coming upwards. The China, whatever you call it, debt swap or whatever, David, you know, there is no difference in the interest paid. What is going to bring a difference is that the interest, if it was dollar denominated, it begins with the Fed rate as the baseline, then you add a percentage. The percentages are going to remain the same, except that adjustment of the Fed rate. But I don't know why this information has not been made available. You keep on asking this question every time. This time, I will guarantee you, I'll ask my PDMO to give you that information, because it will appear like we don't want to give that information. And it is not a secret. I know It's a loan. That loan is now going to be paid for 11 years with 4 years grace period. So 15 years full, if I may remember correctly, with a 4 years grace period. So that's 11 years repayment. Fantastic thing. I will tell you, next year, March, in January, I think, we pay the loans in January for this project. We have been paying over 50 billion shillings. This year we are going to pay 37. Then the second one, 37. There's that savings. 50 something to 37, one installment and another installment. Isn't that a saving? It's a serious saving. Total saving per year is 215 million US dollars. If you can convert that into Kenyan shilling, you know what you're talking about. So it is something that is positive. Chris, you have asked what is this Singapore dream, where we are, time frame. You know, let me be clear about this dream. And it is not a dream. It is a commitment that we are going that direction. Why? We are starting a national infrastructure fund. This national infrastructure fund is going to get the initial capitation from the proceeds of privatization and divestiture. We are targeting about 600 billion shillings. Already we have identified over 300 billion shillings from KPC and divestiture of Safaricom alone. That will give us close to 350, or at minimum 320 billion shillings. Then we will have to look for other sourcing of the rest of the amount. But we are not waiting. The moment we get these resources, we start the process. The process of crowding in private sector. And I've heard people saying, we are creating a private entity. This is not a private entity. This is going to be a limited, not all limited liability companies are private companies. I saw one legislator, senator, speaking, and he has no understanding. He doesn't even understand. He's saying that we are starting a private company. There is nothing. This company is going to be a limited liability company which is formed under GOE, government-owned enterprise. From the word, it is a government-owned enterprise. Only that it is going to be commercially run. Only that it is going to be professionally run. Not like any other parastatals that we form and we bring politicians. In fact, in that fund, the board, we are saying if you have been in politics for the last 5 years, you will not be a board member. So we want to depoliticize this board. But it is a GOE. Let that go out clearly. I'm even hearing how do we put public funds into private. There is nothing private. We are not taking public funds. No, the law cannot even allow you to take public funds to a private entity. In fact, even the Sovereign Wealth Fund, we are creating a holding account at the Central Bank of India. So these are government entities, professionally and commercially run, which are going to crowd in private sector. And some people are saying, if you allow private people to come and put money in the company, it is not, that is not how it works. Kindly please, those who have not understood this thing, hold your horses and listen to us first. This is not a fund where people are going to come in and invest money. There will be no provision. Careful. Usifikiri ati sasa you are going to buy some shares in National Infrastructure Fund. That's not how it works. What is going to happen is that this fund will blend their resources with the private sector. They will tell you, okay, there is a project here. This road is supposed to be done. It will be designed. This fund will be a professional institution that has people to design even projects and tell you this is the costing, this is how we are going to make money out of it, and from this you can invest. And investors will say this is a worthwhile investment. So how much do you have? As National Infrastructure Fund, we want to put in 20%, which is say 200 million or 200 billion. And you bring in 800 billion. Then you get people to bring in 800 billion. The National Infrastructure Fund brings 200 million. The project is done like Rironi Mau Summit is now being done between NSSF and the CRBC. So then you do it, and whatever resources come out of it, The resources that come out of it, in terms of returns, part of it will go to a national infrastructure fund, part of it goes to the private sector. The private sector does not become part of the national infrastructure fund. They are only in partnership. They are only blending capital to do the project. That is how it works in many jurisdictions. And how I wish before these people speak, they can even go and learn some of these experiences. And then they can now speak from a point of information. Some people imagine that the private sector is coming to invest in this institution. That is not how it works. And on the pillars is what the president talked about, and there is no contradiction. The pillars are as follow. Number one is the road sector, which has been identified. Yeah? Investment in the road sector. And we have even talked about the number of kilometers that we intend to do. The second one is underwater and irrigation, mostly the dams. That is going to be done. The third one is energy, generation and transmission. That's an area that has also been identified as commercially viable sector of our economy. The last one is the transport sector, where we have the airport. So maybe the roads and transport sometimes get collapsed into one. So you think there are three. But the pillars, those are the four critical areas that we have targeted at the moment for heavy investment. Then the rest of the economy, the money that will be released from the infrastructure budget will go into providing these services which may not be commercially viable, like education, like water for domestic use, and like health and social protection. Those ones will still get the funding the normal way. And other non-viable projects like roads in the rural area. If you do a road passing in my village, it cannot pay for itself. There's no way you can pay it. We make it commercially viable. So that's what I would say. On tax process, Otieno, I thought we had started communicating from November about people specifically asked to give highlights, maybe in a minute. What is standing out from their report in terms of your suggestion that you are putting across to the government? And maybe you talk about whether in your report you have spoken to capitation and health matters and such. Yes.
Gracias. Very small follow-up. First one, status.
How fast we will achieve this depends on our commitment as a country. The president has a vision and he has spoken to it. The government has a vision which the president has elaborated about 10 years. But you see, achieving first world status, you can do it faster than even 10 years, depending on how you're committed. But if you are not so committed again, it will take us a while. So what we must demonstrate now is to believe in government first. I know that believability has gone down. I don't know why. A lot of politics around. Even things that have worked, no one wants to accept have worked. And if it has worked, then you keep quiet. If it has not worked, you shout, which is okay. But what I'm saying is, if we remain committed and we stay to the course, and we allow this national infrastructure fund to be set, we avoid unnecessary litigation and unnecessary politics and saying things that we probably don't understand, where someone wakes up from his house and starts saying the prices of Safaricom should be 75. Another one talks about it was 45, yeah? Without elaborating to you what made it to be 45. You know, capital markets, the way they operate, I don't know whether these people really understand how capital markets operate. Those of us who have studied capital markets, how they operate, we know that always the prices are dictated by signal. Like, for example, if today I was having business somewhere and you strike some gold, the prices of shares in that area will just go up because there is anticipation. So that is exactly what happened to Safaricom in 2021 when there was an announcement that we were expanding to Ethiopia. So the prices went up. When the market didn't respond as investors thought, the prices came down. That is how capital markets respond and react. Any you get a politician who does not even take his time to engage his brain properly in how capital markets work, tell you it was 45 shillings. So why is it 28 today? He's not explaining to you that. Because his mind is stuck like a gramophone in some kind of political discourse that doesn't really help much. But I know Some of them will start saying that is arrogant. But sometimes you get tired of explaining to people who should be understanding. If you claim to have studied economics, then you should reason better. I have no problem. I can explain to other Kenyans 1,000 times to understand. But someone who claims to be understanding, please give me a break. I cannot be spending all my time responding to your ignorance. It is sickening. So I would respond to other Kenyans who don't understand, but not someone who has studied economics, studied finance, studied statistics. You should understand some of these basic concepts. Anyway, let me not digress again, because I say I may find myself digressing. You put up the positions and you want us to do things differently. And when we try to do things differently, then you want to remain at the same point. Because if someone is telling you, don't start in National Infrastructure Fund, how else do you want us to do our roads that is causing us problems? The road to Namanga is not the one that we should have, and Tanzania is a major and a very important market for us, both in terms of supporting our economy with their raw materials and the rest, and us also exporting to them. The same with Uganda. Look at how it is difficult to get to Uganda border. Look at how now Thika Road is a mess. A road that we thought was a blessing for us a few years ago. We cannot leave these roads the way they are. Energy, we are only generating about 3,300 megawatts. We need 10,000 megawatts for this economy to grow. You cannot do it on budget. We don't have that money. You know, someone asked us, where did we take the money we borrowed the last 3 years? It is less than, it's just a year since he left being chair of the budget committee. Can he explain where he took the money? He was doing cabros to his home in his schools. So, let us be innovative and creative. Let us allow the government space. Okay?
Yes.
Yes.
May I respond to my senior comrade Otieno? He has said that what is the student leaders framework and highlights, deep highlights in this report. I want to tell my senior comrade Otieno that a dance that is lost at the waist cannot be corrected at the feet. So that's why we came to the Treasury and as students who are youths and who have the largest population in this country and we say that we cannot go back to what happened with the finance bill 2024. We cannot go back to what happened even after CS office, where a lot of youths were still peddling misinformation. So it was prudent enough for us youths to stand and have a leading faction who can reach the CS which we are given by our students back at school, so that we can talk to with other comrades, all regions, and talk about one of our things that we want to talk about in this report that is mainly considered here is the student to understand the fiscal communication, because there is a lot of misinformation going on in TikTok, Twitter, and everything. So can we go to the ground and tell those youths what necessarily is there in the budget and what is their input to add in the budget coming 2024, 2026, 2027 plan. Also on matters of education, we are tending, and our main agenda in this report is how can we involve stakeholders. We know that students, matters of education is something that really affects us. How there is delayed capitation, delayed help, that is the only thing that we can discuss with the CS and the administration team on how can all these delays be considered on time so that students can be in school. We don't witness something that like happened previously, that our lecturers are on the streets. Those are things that we want to address. And also addressing this, we also want to address the issue of paid internships. Because youths, we are transitioning into the world. How are we going to transition if we are not taken care of right now? Because we remember two previous government, the Vision 2030 and the 6 points agenda, and now we have the bottom-up economy. So how can the youths get internship? We have the JSS for the education for the teachers. How can we create more field in this budget for this JSS for the teachers to be specific, and even add them more salaries if it is there, and also how can they transition into not becoming interns to permanent and pensionable civil servants of the government. So these are things that we can only discuss if we are on the table. We cannot discuss them in Mbadi Street and those are the Tom Boyer Street with the placards and everything. These are only things that we can discuss if we sit close to the CS like this, and then we tell him specifically what is on the ground. And I really want to appreciate CS for coming on board to listen to young youths who are sharp. We have lawyers here who will look into this budget. How is it legitimate? Does it fit within the constitution? We have students of economics in this platform who will look onto a way of how can we create more forums of business, income, and so forth. And even teachers are here on board. We have all the professions incorporated in this National Student Budget Forum Committee, and as we traverse all those regions, we will really also welcome you to come and air what we will be telling the youth, because that is the first-hand information. What they will be meeting on TikTok and Twitter is not the first-hand information. So if you come on board, we will really appreciate, and I'm really, really grateful. Thank you.
Thank you. I think inclusivity in matters budget and matters finance, and we are now roping in the students across the country. We are going to engage in all the 8 regions with the students to get input from our young generation. Please, however difficult it is, just get some space for us for that. I plead with you. So that as you cover those others, you also have the space for why we invited you here. Otherwise, next time, I will think twice before I invite you. But anyway, just thank you for that. Report objectively, give us the coverage, questions, we are ready. I don't think I've been very mean